In the previous episode, after the battle with Audrey, Mal collapsed. After she woke up, she yelled for her dad and started panicking. Ben and the other VKs, worrying about her health, rushed her to the doctor, who tried to give Mal some sedative in order to calm her down. "Come on, Mal, swallow, swallow," he softly encouraged. Mal slowly swallowed, perhaps unconsciously. The purple-red liquid started to lessen in size, and the doctor started to smile a tiny bit. "Good, that's good, Mal," he whispered as she finished it off. Within a few seconds, she started to calm down. Okay, we're good for now." The doctor turned to Ben and the other 3 original VKs. "You can stay here, but you must be quiet and not mess with the wires." Ben and the others nodded. They didn't want to give the doctor any reason to kick them out. The doctor turned to Ben, gave a small bow, and left the room. Ben went straight towards the chair on Mal's left. Evie and the boys went to sit on the couch, a couple of feet away, and went silent. Ben stayed staring at Mal while the other 3 visitors just relaxed. Well, relaxed as much as they could. "Come on, Mal, you gotta be okay. Hold on, honey, hold on for us," Ben whispered while holding and gently rubbing Mal's hand without a wire on it. He brought her hand to his mouth and gently kissed it. "Come on, Mal, stay strong. I love you." Ben softly sighed. "Stay strong, I love you," a voice whispered in the darkness. A few days passed by. As Carlos walked out of his dorm room, Dude trotted up next to him. Carlos, guess what, man?" "I'm not in the mood right now, Dude." Carlos ran a hand through his black and white hair. It's been 3.5 days since Mal was first injured. How much longer is she going to be like this, he thought. I know, Carlos, but you gotta get your mind off her. Worrying and obsessing over her isn't going to wake her up any faster," Dude replied sympathetically. Yeah, I know, Dude. I can't help it, though. The VKs won't be the same without Mal. It won't be the same. She's been there for me and a part of my life for a while now. Carlos sighed. "Whenever my mom hit me or did stuff, Mal was always the first one there. She was the one who cleaned my cuts, set my broken bone, and helped me to calm down. There were times where it was really bad and I was lost and crazed, and I was hid seeking revenge in dark and abandoned alleyways. Mal was always the first to find me and help me, even if she had her problems to deal with. I don't know where I'd be without her, probably lying around in waste or somewhere on the aisle." Carlos sighed. He hardly ever spoke of his time on the aisle, and he pretty much never talked about his and his mom's relationship to anyone outside the VKs. Dude was silent, which was a first. "Dude, you good?" Carlos finally asked, concerned about the silence Dude's displaying. "Yeah, I'm good. I've never heard much about your mom." Dude hesitantly spoke, not sure how Carlos would react. Carlos nodded. "Yeah, okay." The pair walked into the room Mal was currently in and froze. "Dude, where's Mal?" Carlos asked, his voice shaking. Dude sighed. Carlos, it's not a big deal. Mal." Carlos spun to face his dog. Not a big deal. Dude, Mal was my best friend and..." Dude cut in. "Carlos, you didn't let me finish. Mal was moved to another room. She's not dead." Carlos blinked. "Come on, I'll show you. This is what I was trying to tell you earlier, but didn't get a chance to do so." Dude spun around and trotted out of the room, seemingly unconcerned about Carlos's near panic attack. Carlos shook his head, trying to calm himself down. "She's okay. She's fine, Carlos. She's okay," he reassured himself. He took a deep breath and followed Dude out the door. When Dude and Carlos entered Ben's bedroom, Jay let loose a sigh of relief. He was worried that Carlos wouldn't see Mal in the bedroom and start to have a panic attack. Carlos looked a little shaken, but not as bad as it could have been. Jay approached Carlos with an arm out, meant to give him a man hug. Carlos nodded, and they clung to each other tightly and fiercely. "You okay, man?" Jay whispered into Carlos's ear. He felt Carlos hesitate for a moment, then nodded. Jay breathed a sigh of relief. He knew what could and would happen if Carlos lost it. He didn't think he could go through that again, especially now because Mal wasn't there. And no, she was not dying, Jay. Ben won't let that happen. Jay cut his thoughts off. He refused to think, let alone live, a life without Mal. He couldn't bear it. Besides, he needed to stay strong for Evie and Carlos. They wouldn't be able to handle it if Jay lost it. Neither would Ben. They all needed him strong, and Jay would not let them down. Ben looked from where he stood at the front of Mal's bed over to the boys hugging. He smiled softly. They were all so lucky to have one another. He didn't want to break them up. Ben turned back to face Mal when out of the corner of his eye, he sees Jay whisper something into Carlos's ear, and then Carlos's pause before nodding. "They okay?" Ben wondered, thinking something was up. Ben then mentally slapped himself. Of course they're not okay. Their best friend is badly hurt and in a coma. And I'm in agony, and the three of them have known her for at least half of their lives. The amount of pain I'm feeling right now might not compare to theirs, and I'm her fiancé. His heartbeat sped up as he remembered his proposal to the love of his life. Ben shook his head out of the flashback. "You won't help anyone by breaking into tears," he scolded himself. He then sighed. If only his dad could help, but the beast didn't know what to do. Ben sighed again. "Wait a second. Hey, guys, remember when we were all outside a few days ago and Mal screamed for her dad?" Ben asked. Everyone nodded, a bit confused about why he would bring this up. "Why did she call for him? And while we're at it, who is he?" Ben questioned again. The rest of the group turned to Carlos and Jay, believing that they would hold the answer. The two of them, however, looked to each other confused. Carlos thought that Jay would know since he knew Mal the longest. Jay didn't, though. He shrugged, and then they both turned to face Evie, along with the rest of the group. But Evie wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. Not Ben, not even Carlos or Jay's. The three guys instantly knew that Evie was aware of the identity of Mal's father. "Evie?" Ben prodded. Evie sighed. "All right, fine." Evie relented. "I hope Mal doesn't kill me over this," she thought. "Okay, I'll tell you guys, but you have to promise that you won't overreact, okay? Promise me," Evie demanded of the group. Harry, Uma, Gil, Jay, Carlos, and Ben all gave their word. Evie sighed. Here goes nothing. "All right, Mal never talks about her father because as far as she's concerned, he doesn't exist. He abandoned her as a baby and never looked back. But after Maleficent changed into a lizard, she decided that it was high past time to know who exactly was her father. So she went to get a DNA test. When she found out, she was shocked. It took me weeks to get it out of her. When she finally told me, she broke into sobs. She saw him several times on the aisle. He'd sneak glances at her sometimes, even watch her as she ran after. She stole something from someone. At the time, she thought he was just being creepy. But once she found out that he was her dad," Evie sighed. Come on, Evie, tell them. Stop stalling." She mentally scolded herself. She met the eyes of Carlos, then Jay's, and finally Ben's. "Her dad is Hades." Everyone stared at Evie in shock. Finally, Uma asked, "Are you sure?" Evie nodded, turning away from the group. She was waiting, dreading about the boys' reactions. "The same Hades that tried to kill her last week?" Carlos double-checked. Evie nodded slowly. Jay growled, "I'm gonna kill that son of a gun." He started to stomp off to do exactly that, but Gil held him back, trying to calm him down, a bit by talking about penguins. Jay released a small bit of anger, understanding that Gil was trying to calm him down before he did something he'd regret, like terrifying Carlos and Evie or killing Hades, though he wasn't quite sure how he'd regret that. Once Jay was calm, everyone turned to Ben, waiting for the beast mode to come. Ben just stood there. When he finally looked up at Evie, he asked softly, "Why didn't she tell me?" His eyes filled with tears, his voice breaking in sadness that his girl fiancé didn't tell him about this. Evie's own eyes filled, seeing her best friend's love so sad and disappointed. "I don't know," she whispered. Everyone was silent after Evie's admission. No one else knew how to react to it. Uma finally spoke, speaking the question that was undoubtedly on everyone's mind. "But why did she call for the god of the underworld, which, by the way, is filled with dead people?" Nobody had an answer for that. All of a sudden, they heard an agonizing scream. "Dad!" Mal screamed. She started shaking and thrashing. Her eyelids kept fluttering, and her eyes rolled to the back of her head. "Mal!" Carlos, Jay, Evie, Uma, and Ben shouted. Everyone quickly ran to her side. "Mal!" Carlos tried to shake her awake, but with no avail. She ended up hitting him with her arms that were flung in different directions. Carlos stumbled back and was barely saved by Jay, who pushed him back into balance. Carlos gave him a grateful smile, then shook his head as a response to Jay's unasked question. You hurt? Did the flashback show? I'm fine, Carlos silently answered. It was just an accident. She doesn't even know what's happening or what she's doing. Jay nodded, knowing that Carlos was fine. He didn't need anything. Meanwhile, Gil was calling for a nurse, while Harry, Uma, Evie, and Ben were trying to hold Mal down so she wouldn't hurt herself. They weren't having the best of luck. Once they got one limb down, it would just fling itself back upwards again. When a nurse finally arrived, Mal's eyes opened, just barely, to look at Ben's. Get him, Ben, or else all is lost. Hurry, she whispered. Then she smiled, a soft, tiny curl at the corners of her mouth. Her eyes then slowly closed, with Ben's pleading, pain-filled ones trying desperately to hold her to this side of consciousness. She whispered one last thing as her eyes closed, perhaps for the last time. I love you too, Ben.